You've been heading north 3 days. It's mid-afternoon and your campsite is dead ahead. Tomorrow you circle back to the base. But tonight, around the fire, you'll talk and you'll think about canoeing in the wilderness with the scouts. You'll think about the red canoes waiting for you that first day back at Sommers Canoe Base. That's in Region 10 in the Quetico Superior country in northern Minnesota and southern Canada. Simple thing, a canoe. A frame of wood covered with canvas, doped and waxed. About 70 pounds, 16 foot overall. She was designed by the Indians, and of course they figured out the best ways to handle her. There's a knack to it, whether you're paddling or taking her over a portage. You learn the knack before you head into the wilderness. You start with paddling. You've seen the experts paddle. It seems as easy as walking, almost effortless. But it can wear you out quick if you don't do it right. The Indians and the trappers and explorers knew how to get mileage without tiring, and pretty soon you know. You spread the work evenly between your two arms, pulling with the lower, pushing with the other one. Pretty soon you get the rhythm of it, and you don't even think about it anymore. You paddle through an afternoon, and before you know it, it's automatic. Now, canoemen don't do things exactly the same way everywhere, but their problems are pretty much the same. One is how to pack everything that's needed on a canoe expedition so that it will ride in your canoe and on your back equally well. A good system is to divide your duffel into 5 separate packs according to type. He's showing us how to make up the tent pack. Then you have a personal pack. Notice he's putting small items into separate bags to keep them from getting lost. Other packs for a canoe expedition are the dry pack for foods that must be kept away from flour and sugar, for instance, the wet pack for preserved foods, and the kettle pack for your cooking equipment and other hardware. Packing for an expedition is a science, and a lot of fellows have learned the hard way. The big rule is take only what you need, because remember, you have to carry it. There's a lot of good canoeing all over the country. I happened to take my first trip here in the Quetico Superior area. It's really wild. You can take dozens of trips and never see the same place twice. But wherever you go, it's the idea that you're really on your own that gives you the biggest kick. This is the sport that tests everything you've got. And so you set out. You're about to enter a world most people will never see. A world that looks today the way it did before history. It's a perfect proof ground for your scout skills, your endurance, your plain old-fashioned horse sense, and your ability to get along with the crowd. It's a world for the best of men. Maybe that first hour or two, you'll wonder if you're going to make it. The paddle is getting awful heavy, so you rest for a while. You're not the only one who needs it. Now you learn to take it easy. The wilderness has been there a long time. It'll wait for you. Of course, the whole crew helps plan where to go, but then each day a different man navigates the way in detail. He finds the portages, the campsites, and decides which is the best way to go. It's a big responsibility, but that makes it all the more fun. By now, you have a healthy respect for your canoe. A thing of just wood and canvas, but it carries you, your companion in 150 or 60 pounds of duffel through all kinds of water, 30 miles a day or better. And you've learned her weaknesses. Rock and underwater roots are her enemies. That you keep in mind always, because a punctured canoe is serious business in the wilderness. So you don't beach a canoe. You wade ashore with your duffel and then lift her out of the water without dragging or bumping. And you learn to carry her. Done properly with the weight well balanced, you can go a long way between rests. But you watch out for stumps and rocks and overhanging branches. They can be rough on canoes. And now you're walking a thoroughfare older than any road or street you've ever known. Here is one of America's ancient portages. Indians and then the white men followed this trail 200-300 years ago, lugging furs to the kings of Europe and carrying tall tales they could hardly believe back home. To men with love for the wilderness, to men with canoes, the portages are still open. And again you find blue water. Set your craft in it gently. Stow her cargo dead center and amidships in careful balance. The bowman takes his place. The sternman follows and shoves off into deep water. And the canoeman is in his element again. The sun is getting around to the west. You've been paddling 4 hours, portaging 2. You look down at your packs, your supplies for a week. Did you bring enough? You're awful hungry. The air, the paddling, the scent of the forest do things to your appetite. Hope that navigator's got his map straight. Where's camp? You have to get up close to tell, but this is it. The scouts before you have left it clean as a whistle. That's how you keep it a wilderness. After you get settled, Cook has you set up the reflector oven. He wants to make a couple of pies. Nobody argues with him. The rest of us can't forget that walleye we saw back there at the portage. We'll have fish for supper and maybe breakfast too if we have time to make a live box. Red devils and spinners are your weapons when you're after walleyes and muskies. They weren't fighting that afternoon, but they were biting. There's supper. The pies are coming along. The mincemeat is ready, and both man and beast have but a single thought. When do we eat? That's a black bear. We saw quite a few of them. A lot of deer, too, and the usual beavers and muskrats and porcupines. A whole zoo full of animals. Takes experience to know how much food to bring on a trip like this. You don't want to carry unnecessary weight, and you don't want to go hungry. The answer is to weigh out every last ounce for so many men, so many days. And you don't depend too much on fish padding the menu. Sometimes they don't cooperate. One thing is sure. You don't have to leave all good things behind when you head for the wilderness. Here's proof. If you're a good camper, you can eat as well on the trail as anywhere. And if you've been paddling all day, you can sleep even better. You don't have too much trouble getting up in the morning. There's too much going on. Swimming, for instance. We didn't bother to wear trunks. And there's fish to fillet for breakfast. I guess you know by now there are lots of uses for canoes besides paddling. You can sleep in them too if you don't toss too much. If nothing else works, this is bound to get you out of your sack. And while you're eating, you discuss the day's trip. The navigator says our next campsite looks even better than this one. That'll be going some. And so the second day begins. It brought us new experiences, new things to look at, more mistakes, and at the same time, more skill. Our paddles were dipping into the water more smoothly, keeping in closer, and making cleaner recoveries. You've probably noticed that two men in a canoe use two different strokes. The bowman ordinarily uses a stroke like this. The sternman paddles the same way, except he finishes the stroke with a hook. See how he turns the blade? That's called the J stroke. It keeps the canoe on course, does the steering. Of course, you kneel in a canoe. That puts the center of gravity down low. It's best for speed and for good balance, too. There are other things I could tell you about canoeing and about living in the wilderness, but you'll have more fun discovering them for yourself. Anyway, different people get different things out of it. It's up to you. When you start circling back to the base, you begin figuring how you can get in a little canoeing back home. They say there's good canoeing and good crews almost everywhere.